Hi, I'm Jen Wright Calendar, the author of The Happy Little Garbage Truck and our wonderful new Making Do, Growing Up Colored in the Jim Crow South during the Great Depression. This book was the beginning of another type of writing project for me, but it was one that I had wanted to achieve for like I guess about 30 years. Let me get my other light on. Just realized how my overall, I want you to see me. But this book started with hearing my mother and father tell stories about their childhood and their youth and just growing up during the 40s. And, I had seen a lot of movies because that's what they enjoyed watching, the movies in the 40s as I was growing up. And I thought it was a really beautiful period in some ways. But as I grew up and got to know more of the history of that time period, I was astounded at how horribly difficult it was to grow up in the South as an African American, a Black person. So this book took on a different, I guess, a different type of tone because in one way I wanted to just celebrate the legacy of my parents, and then as I saw things happening in today's world, I said this is a perfect time to say to youngsters and oldsters like myself, what can anyone do if you're in an environment that's not particularly favorable to you? And my parents lived through, I think, a much more difficult time because there were no civil rights, didn't exist at that time. But they had the best attitude of, it was sort of hard for me to connect. Well, how could they come up with such a positive attitude? And I know it was their faith in God. So that's why I talk about family, friends, and faith. That were the three concepts that brought my parents through that time. So I want to put in a plug. The book is on sale on my mattjointernational.com website for 25% off this week only. The sale started yesterday, so you have a few more days until the 9th of July to get a copy autographed by me. And I just would be so thrilled to have you have a copy for yourself because volume 2 is soon to come out. And that's what we're talking about today, just a little bit in brief. But I said this was the hardest volume. I thought the first one was the hardest volume, to write up to this date. I had two computer crashes, and the second one happened while we were out of town. I was just zooming along, making the story corrections because the first one happened in California while I was making the corrections on my document. The second one happened as I was finishing up my corrections to get it to the copy editor. But it's a funny thing, even though the second crash happened while I was out of town, and I had to take my CPU to a guy I didn't know who did a beautiful job of fixing it, Heartland Computers. I realized during that second crash that it gave me time to think about what I had been reading in my story. And there were some parts that just, I wondered if I could do a little bit better. And I know writers always want to change things up to the bitter end, but this was really, I think, a valid thought process. So we went to the library, and I happened to find several books that helped to illuminate what was happening during that period prior to World War II. And it was amazing how many holes I was able to resolve by reading several books, from even going back to the 1900s all the way up to World War II period. And when I got the computer back, I just started, outlining where did I want to insert this information that would round out my story. So it was so wonderful that I had a crash, the second crash in particular, because sometimes when you have a space or downtime, it's for a reason. And I said it was a God opportunity. I needed to fix some parts, and I was able to I believe I'm reading it the third time through since the corrections to see if my thought process is rewarded. So with James Clear, he said in his question of today, is this project pulling me in or am I pushing it forward? Well, I had been pushing it forward, but when your computer crashes, you have to resolve the issues within yourself that it's not always your timeline that's going to make a difference. It's what do you do with that time? And I could truly say that I believe God directed my steps in this resolution because these novels are really important to me, not only because they share my family legacy in a fictionalized way, but also, I want to make a difference. And I believe watching and looking at these characters, how they solve their challenges in life, will help each of us in reflecting on what we could do and how we can change and shape our attitude to have a more full life and a joyful life. So thank you for being with me. Glad to be back in my old studio. And I hope that you will share and subscribe. And don't forget, it's 25% off for an autographed copy of Making Do, Volume 1, this week up to the 9th of July. So I'll talk with you later, and I'll put all the information in my description box. Take care. Bye-bye.